Right now, I want to see 50 micro-budgeters confidently land the 4- and 5-figure jobs.
And action.
Welcome back to another episode of Filmmakers Focus. I'm Doc Kennedy. This week's special guest is Jacob Keenum of churchfilms.com and the Church Films podcast. And what I want to talk about real quick before we get to the interview is missed opportunities. I feel like some of you are hearing the word church, and you might just be like, this is not for me. This is not something I want to listen to. I promise it is. What Jake's going to be talking about is some different methods that he's working on of helping people land $1,000 plus contracts. What Jake's going to be talking about has nothing to do with church. It has to do with his desire to see people succeed. And when we hear something that we think is going to be going one way, we miss out on opportunity. So I want to encourage you that just because you don't agree with someone 110% doesn't mean that you can't learn from them. I feel like everyone that I run into is my superior in one way or another. And it doesn't matter if that's the person that's out on the street or the guy in the high rise. They're all my superior in one way or another, because I don't know it all. And they've walked paths in life that I never have and I never will. That means that they have that experience that I can learn from and have that extra arrow in the quiver, or however you want to put it. But just because you don't agree with somebody all the way, and we see this a lot with political opinions, just because you don't believe what someone else does or they're thinking a little bit different than you are, doesn't mean that they don't know anything. So I encourage you to just put down whatever barriers are keeping you from learning from people. Don't let that get in the way of you learning what could be something that would be extremely beneficial in your life, and allowing them at the same time to get to know you, because you're going to have something to offer to them that's going to be just as valuable. So I just say this because I love you all and I really care, and I know Jake cares, and that's why he's on today. So thanks for letting me encourage you that way. Hope that makes a little bit of sense. Hope that'll make a little bit of impact in your life. I know that way of thinking hasn't always been the case for me, for sure. I'm a work in progress, no doubt. I definitely haven't always thought that way, but I do now. Totally believe that. And I also appreciate you hanging in there with me through the allergy season. I sound a little stuffed up, I know, and I definitely don't sound my best, so I appreciate you all. Be blessed, and here is my conversation with Jacob Keenum.
And now our feature presentation.
Well, hey, Jake, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doc. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yes, this is great. I love what you have going on over at Church Films. And the reason I wanted to have you on, Jake, is I think a lot of people might be missing out on what you have to offer. You've got, 60-some episodes now? Are you into the 70s?
I say we because it's myself mostly, but there are a couple of people that support this new operation. We are in episode 75, awesome. And that's where we decided to take a season break because this summer has a couple of opportunities on the horizon that need our full focus. So we'll come back in the fall.
Totally understandable. So 75 episodes out, and I've gotten a lot out of each one. It's just been a great resource for me as a filmmaker.
And it's been good having you along for the journey. And for that matter, you helped me get to that episode 75.
Yeah, I was on an early episode, and I'm very honored by that. I wanted to have you on just to talk about what you have to offer, because I think it's easy for people to skip over when it says church in the title. And the full truth is, we're all filmmakers, and you have to just start right there. Any interview that you listen to, no matter who it's coming from, they might say something that you don't agree with, but that's fine. You just let it go in one ear out the other, and you take what does resonate with you. And when it comes right back to it, this is just about filmmaking. It's about art and what we can do to help take our careers to the next level.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing that I've learned over the last 18 months with Church Films, is that you need to figure out who your audience is. It needs to be super specific. I mean, like right down to, I want to teach college graduates in Clark County, Nevada, how to finance a $500 film. Like, it needs to be specific. And I had like big pie in the sky aspirations when I started out, huge. And when you do that, you end up serving nobody. It's so true. And everybody says it, and it's like cliche. And the hard-headed types like myself are like, oh, yeah, well, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm gonna go reach everybody that's on my list. But no, you have to think of something super specific. And for the micro-budget filmmaking community, I think there are lots of opportunities to be super specific. It's right under our nose. I mean, this is a whole new wave of people that we have in the last 5-10 years of filmmakers and storytellers that we did not have. It's just unprecedented. So if you are a budding filmmaker, pick your niche. And if I'm not knocking this when I say it. If it's wedding videography, that's good. Niche down on it. Be the best wedding videographer in your state. And whatever that best might be, make that very specific. You want to have 20 clients on your belt? If that makes you the best, okay, but be specific. And that's what I've had to learn the hard way through a lot of ups and downs.
Well, it is kind of it feels like an oxymoron, because you're looking at the big picture, and it feels so awkward going with what seems like a small picture.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right when you're talking about your state. So like, you start where you're at, just hone in on that area. I know you want the world. We all do, and and it's crazy. The more niche I've got. When I first started podcasting, I had a show called Dream Warriors, and it was just people sharing about the dreams and goals that they've accomplished. It turned out that was too broad.
Yeah.
That people just couldn't pick up on that. And when I niched down with what was on my heart, which was filmmaking, it's crazy how things have taken a leap. I've gotten more niche, so I've gotten smaller, yet I've gained with listeners. And there's people that are actually getting solid information that's actually impacting their lives versus before, where it was just too broad. It was all over the place, and nobody was really picking up on anything. People within the individual guest would get something out of it, if they were a follower of that guest specifically. But niching down, I mean, it's crazy how effective that is.
Right. It's almost like the gear analogy with the bicycle. We got to be the small gear because we're able to turn the bigger gears. But if we start off with the big gear, if we're in that top gear, we're going to have such an uphill battle trying to move.
So what made you want to start this podcast?
So when I started, I'd say early 2015 with churchfilms.com, I had the site up at the very end of 2014, but I didn't really start moving until the beginning of 2015. It's because at the time, I wanted to be able to find a way to connect churches, hence the name Church Films, with better media. But even that's kind of vague and non-specific when you say, well, what's better media? So I thought, okay, it'd be great to do what this guy that I love, John Lee Dumas, over at entrepreneuronfire.com, he's doing, and he's interviewing all these people that are just crazy passionate about taking their skill set and using it for the betterment of their fellow man. What if I could do that, but with film and the people that are a part of film? And I don't just mean the people behind the camera, people that have a hand in the filmmaking process, from the writers to the colorists. I never had a colorist, but that was the big picture idea, was that anybody that has anything to do with filmmaking, let's interview them and figure out what makes them tick, what makes them move, and serve that to my fellow filmmakers. And it was kind of broad, and it really was. And it wasn't until the last, honestly, 10, 20 episodes that I started really zoning in on just the people who are dealing with the micro-budget filmmaking on the micro level. Because you know as well as I do, micro-budget filmmaking, that's like anywhere from $0 to $1 million. And they need a new word besides micro budget. They need like a sub $100,000 category, because you do have very talented people like Solomon Leektown or Diego Contreras that are able to go and be a part of $2 million budgeted commercial videos, and from that they see a 5-figure sum for their 3 months of hard work. And then at the same time, you also have the people that do the videos for their businesses and their nonprofits downtown in their backyard, and they'll do it to the tune of 4 figures, hopefully charging what they're worth, and not scraping by on 3 figures and eating rice and beans all month long. So when I started that podcast, it was just too broad. It really was. And then once this next season comes back, it's going to continue to be super specific, because that's the direction I've been moving in ever since I realized there needs to be that niche, just like we were talking about. There needs to be that focus on reaching those micro-budget filmmakers that do want to be the next Christopher Nolan, the next Alfred Hitchcock. But to do that, we have to prove that we are able to manage a budget of that size. We have to prove that we are good stewards of those kinds of finances. And it starts with having that right attitude with the 4-figure shoots that you do downtown for Uncle Bob's Auto Repair. We have to do client work in between projects. I mean, that's just essential. It's how we support ourselves, and it's how we actually gain that experience with pitching and communicating, leading, and all the other things that film school can't teach you, but you just have to go and do. So when I come back, my podcast will be the same podcast, but super specific, whereas before it was just kind of like all over the map with all the filmmakers. But it's going to come back and be the people that are actually doing the 4- and 5-figure shoots, because those are the people I want to encourage, that they can level up.
So with that said, it's a great segue there, Jake. Let's talk about what you got going on with your $1,000 push.
Once I realized I needed to niche down, make that the focus of actually getting people to have the right attitude and mindset, that these 4-figure jobs that they could do in their own backyard for the businesses that are right there under their nose, that's when I realized, okay, we need to develop a tool to get people to be able to quote their clients or would-be clients in that first conversation. Because you know as well as I do, if you're having to source cold leads just to make ends meet or to fill in the gaps between projects, you need to be able to present yourself as clearly and as quickly as possible. Because is a strong word. When you talk to those clients, you need to tell them, well, I'm reaching out to you because I see what you're doing to connect dog owners with quality organic dog food. And I think there's a story to be told there. And that's what I want to come alongside and partner with you to do. I want to tell your story. Give me a call. It'll be a 10-minute chat. I'd love to hear what you have, and let's connect. When you get that client, that's the hard part, is getting them to commit to that first conversation. But when you do on the phone, you got to give them that quote, the very first conversation. So many times in my own life too, and so many other people that just will populate Reddit and Quora and say the same thing over and over again. I just got a bid for a job, but I have no idea what's a quote. You can't do that. You got to have a quote right then and there ready to go. I mean, if it's the game of 21 questions, so be it, but you got to give them an exact figure or as close as possible. I mean, obviously, Doc, you know as well as I do, there are things that you can't control in that first conversation. Like, well, I'm going to have to go to Flagstaff, Arizona, and then take a ride over to Raleigh, North Carolina, just to get these 2 sequences. I don't know the airfare off the top of my head, so I'll get back to you with a quote on that. Obviously, we can't account for that right there in the first conversation, but for the stuff that's right there in your local area, you got to be able to pound out a quote right then and there, and then promise them to, in the next few minutes, send them a quote, this quote that you've just given them, as an invoice with a detailed breakdown of what that cost looks like, and send it to them. But at the same time, stress the value, because they're going to look at the number and they're going to have that initial gut reaction of, oh! Even when you give them a flat rate, which you should always do, filmmakers, never give them an hourly rate. They will lose their mind. They will tell you no. Give them a flat rate.
Yeah.
Tell them that
I'm very anti-hourly.
As everybody should be, but for some reason, this old way of doing things is still pervasive. Like, people think, well, I do $40 an hour work. You know, whatever the case may be, you're going to lose your client because they're going to get lost in the sauce and they're going to be scared. Don't do that. Give them a flat rate and give them the assurance of that in that first conversation, so you don't waste their time or yours for that matter. So I came up with this tool, and right now it's nothing elaborate because it doesn't have the elegance of an app, but it is a very dedicated worksheet that crunches through every single facet of our filmmaking that we do, from that initial phone call to the final wrap. It's in the can and it's backed up in the cloud. Everything that goes into those kinds of jobs, we have to be able to account for that. And we don't have the time in those first 10 minutes on the phone to be able to sit there and pound out numbers. So why not have a machine do it for us? That was my mindset. We've got the tools for it. And having been a math teacher back in the day, I understand a thing or two about numbers. I'm not the best, but I can move them around. So I put the tool together. It's been through several rounds of improvements, of testing, and it's in the hands of people that are on the front lines of film and video so that they can give it the proper feedback that it needs. And so far, it's been winning. It's been great. All that to say, it is not meant for the large companies. It's meant for the guys like you and me that, for the most part, operate as one-man bands, and sometimes we pull a crew in with us. But we don't have that office downtown where we have also a dedicated graphic design artist or maybe even a CPA on retainer. It's not meant for that because their operating costs are different than the solopreneurs like yourself, myself. We do bring people in to help us out with our projects. There's no mistaking that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, when it comes to the company name, it's just one person. That's me, that's you, and that's what this tool is for. And that's okay. I think it's 90 or 85% of small businesses in America are one-man bands, and that's from the Small Business Administration.
That's awesome. So you figured out where the niche was. You found a need, and you're meeting it. And love what you got going on there, Jake. So
thanks, Doc.
Where can people find your tools and how to get access to them?
I think the best thing to do is to just go to churchfilms.com. That's where all of the free content is. And cool. I come from this school of thought as I study and learn from my mentors that you want to be able to provide a lot of value in your content. So I would start there. And if that's something that you're interested in, the tools are up there in the top navigational links. But that's not what I want to stress. I want people to come and learn and engage and be a part of this community, because I realize even after going through Reddit now for months, I mean, yes, filmmakers can be absolutely brutal and absolutely harsh to each other with criticism. But at the same time, at the end of the day, they're also going to be the biggest fans of your work because we know what it's like to be in the trenches. And to have those clients turn you down after 40 hours of hard work and you have nothing to show for it. So we are a double-edged sword as a community goes. We love each other, and at the same time, we will beat each other down. But the love is definitely there. So we definitely are good at sticking together.
Awesome. So we'll have links to that in the show notes, Jake. And I want to ask you about your podcast. So you've had 75 guests now. Have you had one takeaway that you would say has just been impacting on your life?
You're asking me to distill 75 plus takeaways into one?
Just one. Just one, Jake.
Oh, that's tough.
Or who is your favorite guest?
There is a right answer. There is a right answer? Doc Kennedy.
Good call.
And be authentic.
I'm shocked. Yeah, I am shocked, Jake. Man, that's great.
This is a difficult question to answer because I swear I've learned more from that podcast than anybody else that's ever listened to it.
Absolutely.
It's been absolutely beneficial and just a huge help to me. The biggest takeaway off the top of my head that has stuck with me day in and day out ever since I had her on the podcast was with Christina Faith. Mm-hmm. She said something I will never forget, no matter where this journey of filmmaking takes me and my family. And that is, in this line of work, you need to be always looking for where to show grace. Because with video clients, they have all kinds of different expectations, needs, wishes, desires, and the communication is always the Achilles heel of that relationship. Be the first to show grace because they don't understand the work that we put into our video projects. They don't understand that you have families and responsibilities as well. I mean, obviously, we're not a novelty act, but some people have that mindset. They really do, as if we're a cut above the video gamers that just go home at the end of the workday and just kind of zone out all day and veg. Because of the word video, it's like, well, there's this misconception there. So be always willing to show grace to people. We have to do that. We have to assume goodwill and be always willing to show grace because we do get into heated conversations and we do butt heads with video clients because you're talking about competing with an alpha of their world and trying to break down those barriers and find that common ground to tell their story. And it's the same as if you were Christopher Nolan, obviously. I mean, somebody finances his films and he has to be responsible to them. And he has to figure out how to break down those barriers and find that middle ground between what the financiers and producers and the studio execs are looking for and what his vision is. And I'm sure that his job requires a ton of grace too, and understanding and patience. And so for me, out of 75 episodes, that is stuck like glue more than anything. Be always willing to show grace.
So, Jake, as we're wrapping up here, this is what you like to do at the end of your show.
Absolutely.
Any last words of encouragement for that budding filmmaker out there?
For the budding filmmakers, there are so many things I could say to encourage you, but I think through the 18 months of fire and doing things the wrong way, what I have learned is not only do you need to niche down, but you need to put your mission and your vision somewhere that you can see it. And for a lot of people that aren't familiar with the corporate world, and that's okay. I mean, the mission and vision are your what and your why, but really you should do it in the other order, just like Simon Sinek says. You should start with your why. You need to write it down. For you, figure out why it is you love filmmaking. For me, it's real simple. I want to encourage the Almighty. I want to encourage others, and I want to bring glory to the Almighty. I'm a man of faith, so I want to see those two things done in everything I do, and that's why I love film. But my what, and you need to figure out what that is too, and make it super specific, put it down. My what's so simple. Right now, I want to see 50 micro-budgeters confidently land the 4- and 5-figure jobs. That's what I want to do.
Awesome.
It's super specific, and you need to do that too. And if you don't see it every day, I mean, put it on the bathroom mirror, on your office wall, whatever, guess what? You're never going to reach it. Goals, we have to see them. And that's why Martin Luther King was so successful when he said to everybody, everywhere, I have a vision that every single man, woman, and child in the state of Alabama will not be divided over race, that little boys and girls will be able to hold hands on the playgrounds in Alabama regardless of race. Like, that was so clear. It was so crystal clear. People got behind it. Or like when Kennedy said, within 10 years, we're going to get people on the moon. And then NASA, they pounded it out. They did it in 8 years. Those guys hustled because it was super clear, it was super specific, and they could see it. And I'm pretty sure they did write it down. Yeah. At least a couple of NASA engineers. So you just write down your why and your what and look at them every day. If you can do that, you're well on your way. You're going to be 1 out of 10,000. You're going to be steps ahead of what the other guys are doing that talk and dream about doing film, but won't actually make the steps towards doing it.
That's good stuff, Jake. Well, this has been awesome, brother. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share what you got going on. And I'm going to encourage everyone to listen to the Church Films podcast, no matter
thank you.
What you think you're going to be hearing. As I said earlier, take what you like and leave the rest. Don't worry about it, because there's so much that we can learn from each other just as filmmakers, as artists across the board. And I really feel like people do themselves a disservice when they it's a form of segregation and push people out of their mind just because they think that they're going to be hearing something that they don't want to hear. But we're always open to learning. We got to be willing to learn from those that we don't agree with on everything. I mean, shoot, and I'm a person of faith too, so if I didn't listen to people that didn't have the same faith as me, I wouldn't learn anything. So,
yeah.
It's important to me. And at the end of the day, I just want to be a friend to those who are out there that are next to me, running with me, try to encourage them the same. And I know you're doing the same thing, Jake. So it's just about encouraging the filmmaker out there, wherever they're at, and helping them take those steps and helping them take the next steps in their career, man.
Absolutely. Well said.
All right, Jake, where can people get in touch with you, buddy?
I think the best place to go is just to go to churchfilms.com/blog. If you want, there's a contact form there. But if you want to do something that's a little more fluid and just easy to do, you could go to Twitter. I check Twitter daily, well, every workday at least. And Twitter is, I think in a lot of ways, tried to supplant the email. It hasn't done it, but it's an easy way to get in touch with people. It's at The Church Films on Twitter. Just like a lot of other guys, I have that sad sob story of trying to get at Church Films, but somebody sat on it. Some squatter.
Dang it. Well, that's the way it goes. But
yes.
Well, keep up the good work, my friend.
Thanks, Doc.
Hey, real quick, if you could leave us a review on iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. Helps us get a little more exposure in the iTunes search engine. And if you could share, retweet, post on Facebook, whatever you want to do, any share is always appreciated. And I'll tell you, the biggest impact isn't on me. It's for the person that you're sharing it with, because they're going to get something out of this episode or whatever episode you share that's going to impact their lives. There's a little nugget in there for everyone. Go and grow.